Welcome to Cure America with Donald T. Eason. Today we bring you a very special speech from CURE's 2025 National Clergy Summit, held at the historic Willard Hotel in Washington, D.C. We're bringing you two urgent, pastor-equipping messages from the 2025 CURE National Clergy Summit. To introduce them, here's the man leading our national clergy outreach, CURE's National Clergy Director, Tori Snow.
Doug Eagle is the president, CEO, and registered principal of the Eagle Wealth Management Group, as well as a registered investment advisor. He's been doing this for 25 years, so he knows what he's talking about. His mission is to protect and serve both group and individual clients from poorly designed plans, poor investment choices, lack of attention to market conditions, and more. Doug provides personalized services and an individualized approach, demonstrating genuine care and concern for his client's financial future. So keep that in mind. Hopefully you'll get around him. Prior to founding Eagle Wealth Management Group, Doug was a police officer for the San Diego Police Department. Did I hear you mention you were SWAT? Yeah, so SWAT. Their motto, to protect and serve, is in Doug's DNA. Doug has built Eagle Wealth Management Group on teamwork, tenacity, investigation, and initiative. It is in these attributes that make him a well-respected financial advisor among his colleagues. He's a tenacious advocate and tackles financial opportunities with determined resolve. Come on up, please welcome Mr. Doug Eagle.
All right, good evening. God has a interesting sense of humor sometimes. A little bit about me, a little background, a little further back than what was just mentioned. I came to the Lord in 1987, just radically saved. And my senior year in high school, and he basically put a desire in my heart to serve and shepherd people. Just like my uncle Ben, who was a pastor in Ohio for many, many years. But so when I look at all these pastors, I'm like, that's what I wanted to do. Lord, that's where I wanted to be. Why not? And God had other plans. I went to Bible college, right? But he had other plans. He pulled me out, and we ended up in construction management. I ended up meeting my wife there, who we're coming up on 35 years of marriage. Yep, absolutely. Thank you. The other strapping young dude you see me walking around with, that's my oldest son, 32-year-old. He's an advisor with me as well. So we were blessed. He was crazy enough to work with his old man. So thankful for that. But God had other plans, and after about 9 years on the department and 5 to 6 of it being on SWAT, he paved the way for me to move my wife and 3 boys to Valencia, from San Diego to Valencia, California, which is the very, very northern end of LA County. You know, LA, the state of fruits and nuts and the land of riots. Yeah, that's where we're at. So yeah, he moved us there in 2000, and I thought that's what I was going to do the rest of my life, is just build retirement plans, manage people's wealth, and with estate planning and doing all of that until I retired. And that was the plan. It wasn't until 2008 where my life really got wrecked. And it wasn't for what you think. It wasn't the financial industry that did it. My Uncle Ben passed away of a massive heart attack as a pastor. And he passed away suddenly. And my aunt really didn't have things set aside the way it should have been for all those years. Nobody told him what should have been, all the benefits a pastor could have in his retirement plans. And so I wrestled with that for about a year. And I was like, why didn't anybody tell him? Why didn't I tell him? I mean, prior to that, I had been working with pastors a little bit and been learning about these church plans that were out there. And that was in 2009, after about a year. I jokingly tell people, hey, Jacob did it for a night and ended up with a hip dislocated. And I wrestled with him a year and I didn't get anything except a broken heart. And a pastor friend came up and said, hey, do you know about these 403B9 church plans? I said, yeah, I do. And so it took me about a year. And we launched a retirement plan. It allows me to actually what God called me to do, and that was shepherd his shepherds in the area of finance. And that's what he's called me to do. I do have a book of business, wealth management business, and that's what allows us to keep the lights on, doors open. But our business ministry is to provide a very high quality, very low cost church plan for pastors and their staff. And it's been great. I love doing that. And what I have found out, there's other advisors that have no clue that these plans even exist. Some of them that don't know how to design them. And then I've actually, unfortunately, run across advisors that have actually taken advantage of you pastors. I kind of want to grab a cat of nine tails, I tell people from time to time when I find out what's going on, because they're just doing it to line their own pockets. They're the modern day money changers that are happening. And I feel bad, and I try to do what I can to help them to get through that. But this is why I'm here today, is to specifically talk to you about real briefly, 403B9 church plans, and how having the wrong plan can cost you thousands in fees and actually cost you thousands in taxes that you're not aware of. I actually had one church that the advisor had them in the wrong plan, and it cost the church $10,000 a year to do a plan audit that they should have never been doing. I was able to write a letter to Department of Labor. How often do you get to do that and actually have them listen? Not often, but they did. I told them this is a church, it's a church plan. They're not regulated by ERISA, and the ERISA is the Employment Retirement Income Securities Act. And so I told them they're not part of that, they don't need to be, and they listened. We got them out of that plan, put them in a 403B church plan, and things have been great. But I have a deep concern. I know there's a lot of pastors that have a deep concern. What happens to you? And I know, I've talked to enough pastors. We've got a couple hundred churches that we work with across the country. I don't care what denomination, it doesn't matter. I've got a Jewish synagogue in New York. I've got churches serving Jesus on Hawaii. I mean, it just covers everything, right? But there is a concern. What happens when you go home to be with the Lord? You know, a lot of you pastors, I've heard it, I'll retire when the casket lid closes. And I get it. And that will happen. The problem is that's going to be a single wide casket. It's not a double wide. So what are you leaving behind for your wife? And that's what we want. And I know you have that concern because you do not want your family to be a burden to your kids or to the church, because I've seen the church take the burden. And we want to make sure that doesn't happen. So what is a 403B9 church plan? There's a difference. School districts have 403B plans. Nonprofit organizations have 403B plans, but they're not churches and they're not church plans. So a couple quick high-level notes. It does tax-deferred growth. Here's the problem. Here's the issue. You can put money in pre-taxed, and Pastor Easton mentioned it already. He kind of gave away my thunder a little bit, but that's okay. He primed the pump for this one. You get to put it in pre-tax. As a matter of fact, if you let me at your board, I'll get the elders to put money in from the church as well. That goes in pre-tax. And then when you're visiting a missionary in Hawaii, you can pull your money out tax-free as a housing allowance. Yes, you have a housing allowance now, and that's great. Use it, and that's awesome. But we're going to preserve future housing allowance distributions when you're no longer at the church. That's a huge benefit. And if you allow me to design your contributions, we can do pre-tax for housing. We can do after-tax into the Roth 403B9. And then in retirement, you pull your housing out tax-free. You pull your living expenses, travel expenses, vehicle expenses out of the Roth. And now you have a 100% tax-free retirement. There is nothing better on God's green earth. Well, Yeah, on God's green earth. Once you go to heaven, then it's tax-free forever, eternity, right? So yes, we want to preserve that for you. And then you've got something in case you go home, when you go home, not if, when you go home to be with the Lord, you've got something set aside for your family. And so that is great. And here's a couple other little benefits. Again, think about this. If you're not able to, the church can. I actually have churches, the boards, putting in up to $70,000 a year into the pastor's account. Now, if you add another $7,500, that's $77,000 a year. And what's nice is I've helped pastors in their final year or two into retirement actually get completely caught up, because there's an additional benefit that's not in any other retirement plan except a 403b-9. And I actually have churches contributing to the pastor's account for up to, not 1, not 2, not 3, but up to 5 years after they leave the pulpit. Up to his taxable, in his case, it was $60,000 a year. They're putting in $60,000 a year for 5 years while he's in retirement. And because it's a non-ERISA plan, we can custom design it any way you want. You can do matching, non-matching, you can do whatever you want. We can help you design. So why does that matter? Again, as I mentioned, when you go home to be with the Lord, we want something set aside for your wife. Not to mention we have life insurance, disability, long-term care. We do all of that. We have an insurance agency as well. But it's biblical, right? If I get to your board, we're going to talk about 1 Timothy 5:17. You're worthy double honor. And why should the corporate world take better care of their employees than the elder board taking care of their pastor? Not right. Not right at all. All right, you ready for this one? But it's still your responsibility. 1 Timothy 5:8 says, those that don't take care of their own families worse than an unbeliever. So it's incumbent upon you also to jump on and do the planning and make sure that you're saving and making sure that's being cared for, so your family's being cared for. So you will not surprise me, but it would be my honor and my pleasure to actually shepherd you and serve you in this manner, because that's what God's called me to do, is to shepherd his shepherds in this area of finance. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys, and I look forward to talking with you soon. God bless.
Dr. Darryll Jones, he'll be presenting next, and I just have to tell you, I'm very biased in this. We're a family of home educators. My wife has partnered with a number of churches in order to facilitate the homeschooling needs of our children, to the point to where homeschooling is not what it was. I was actually fairly hesitant about homeschooling, but when she showed me all the resources that were out there, and specifically the type of resources that people like Mr. Jones with the Herzog Foundation is putting out there, it's really important. So I do want to introduce Dr. Darryll Jones, who serves as the president of the Stanley M. Herzog Charitable Foundation. Darryll was the first hire of the Herzog Foundation in January of 2021. Prior to serving at the Herzog Foundation, Darryll served as senior pastor and youth pastor and worship pastor at Greece Evangelical Church beginning in 1986. Darryll received a Bachelor of Arts in Speech Communications from Missouri Western State University. He received a Master of Divinity and Doctor of Ministry degrees from Nazarene Theological Seminary in Kansas City, Missouri. Darryll and his wife Tammy have 3 grown daughters, 3 wonderful sons-in-law, and 10 grandchildren. Come on up, Dr. Jones.
Thank you, Fred. I appreciate it, Tori. Yeah, Christmas just keeps getting more expensive at the Jones home, and we are blessed for sure. Just one thought here that I just want to throw out, and he didn't ask me for it, but I'm so glad that Doug Eagle is here. He really is my finance guy. I met him probably 6 or 8 years ago. I went to a conference and he was speaking, and he kept talking about these 403b-9 plans. Now, I had my whole life invested in a 403b plan. I had never heard of a 403b-9 plan, and he starts talking about how my dollars can go into a plan that I can take out in retirement as housing allowance, and he had my attention. And I caught him afterwards, and I said, help me understand this. And he said, listen, my whole goal is to help pastors pay into retirement tax-free and take out tax-free. And I thought, hot dog, that's my goal as well. And as a matter of fact, retired now from pastoral ministry. I pastored for 35 years full-time, and praise the Lord for that opportunity. And now I'm in a different kind of ministry, but ministry nonetheless. But I will tell you, for the last 3 years, I have in fact been taking out an annual housing allowance that equals what I was taking out when I was pastoring, and I'm doing it tax-free. So I just say that as a testimonial. What he is saying is true, and he's my guy. My wife Tammy knows that I gave my life to Jesus, and I gave all of my money to Doug, and that's pretty much the way that has worked. But it's been a blessing, and so I really appreciate my friendship with Doug. But I just want to speak on his behalf. We live in interesting days. I was, Pastor Donald Easton and I were talking earlier. I said it's like it's the best of times and the worst of times. I think New York is about to vote in a socialist mayor. And at the same time, Gen Z is experiencing a revival that is unprecedented only to the Jesus movement of the 1970s. When my predecessors came to Christ, my youth workers in church used to be former druggies who came to Christ on a beach in California. If you saw the movie Jesus Revolution, that's what's happening on college campuses around the country. I was with a good friend in Pittsburgh earlier this morning. Spent the day with him yesterday looking at his urban ministry and talking with him, met with his board earlier today. And I said, are you seeing in Pittsburgh this Jesus revolution, this revival? And he said, I can only tell you the college campuses are experiencing testimonials of young people being baptized and coming to Christ on college campuses around the country. It is amazing what's going on. I mean, it is the best of times, it's the worst of times. And so really tonight, I want to inspire you and I want to encourage you. And I pray that I can do both of those. And you know what? If I offend you in the process, you're a pastor, you can take it. You're a big kid. I pastored for 35 years. I cannot be offended. I think it's virtually impossible to be offended at this time. Many have tried and many have failed. Can I get an amen? But here's the thing. Judge Brown, I so appreciated all of your words regarding the revolution, certainly regarding Coolidge. I just finished the book on Coolidge. And have recently become a member of the National Society for the Sons of the American Revolution. Which means I have an ancestor who was a patriot, and coincidentally, he was a Moravian, exactly, who came from Europe with his family. He was a part of the prayer revival, the world's largest prayer meeting. This was my, 6 generations back, my grandfather, and he fought in the Revolutionary War. He was a private, and then he was a corporal, and when the war was over, he became a minister. So I knew that I had a lot of sinners in my line. I wasn't aware that my lineage had another minister, so that was a blessing for sure. In Romans, the author writes that the day will come when people will exchange the truth for a lie. I think that's where we are. They have exchanged the truth for a lie. That's the culture that we're living in, right? Jesus said in Luke's Gospel, chapter 6, when the student is fully equipped, he will be like his teacher. Can I ask you, in 2025, when the students in your church who are being exported to public education are fully grown, if they are like their teacher, is that a good thing for the kingdom of God, or is that a bad thing for the kingdom of God? I'm still one of those guys who believes in the church. I think Jesus believed in the church. It's his bride, right? I mean, if you don't like my wife, we may have a relationship, but it is going to be somewhat estranged. And I think the bride of Christ is precious to the Lord. And can I just say this? You have the privilege of being a steward to the bride of Christ. Never take that for granted. And I would say to you, after 35 years of pastoral ministry and now 5 years leading a Christian education foundation, never take for granted that on Easter Sunday, you have the privilege of preaching the gospel. Never take that for granted. Never take that for granted. Having said all that, I just want to say that we are living in an interesting day where what's being pumped out in education departments across the country is a woke ideology that is that hates everything that you stand for and everything that you believe in. It was the great Vodi Bakum who said if we're not going to stop exporting our children to Caesar's schools, then let's stop complaining when our kids come back as Romans. And the fact of the matter is, we have got to decide. And listen, you have 1,000 things on your desk. I used to have your desk. You get stuff in the mail. You don't get stuff in the mail anymore. Remember the days of mail? You get M-A-I-L, mail, M-A-I-L, not to be confused with M-A-L-E. Remember when we had mail in America? That was an interesting day too. I tell people my personal email address is darryljones@hotmail.com, M-A-I-L. I don't want to confuse them. not that they would be. But here's the thing. We're living in a day where education departments are hostile to everything that you believe in. And I think the day when the clergy can be silent about education, those days are yesterday. That's the past. That's the past. We're losing our young people. There's an all-out assault on our young people, and it's happening from education departments. The single most woke department on any public college in the country is not the political science department. It is not the law department. It is the education department, and they are cranking out teachers that hate everything that you believe in. And we have, I was a youth minister for the first 10 years, 11 years of my youth ministry. Full time, I was a youth pastor. And we had a very active youth group. We had them for an hour and a half on Sunday morning. We had them for 2 hours on Wednesday night. And on Saturday, I had them for 2 hours. The public education system has them 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 9.5 months a year. If you believe in children's ministry, if you believe in youth ministry and student ministry, I would ask you to prayerfully consider an education ministry out of your church where you begin to make disciples who are following Jesus Christ. You can do it. Oh, I can't do it. We don't have a gymnasium. You don't need a gymnasium. We don't have a marching band. We don't need a marching band. We need a bigger building. No, you don't. How big's your building on Sunday morning? How many days is that building empty? How many of those rooms do you have? You could have that many students. Well, that's not going to fix my whole community. Nobody's going to help these students. And so it's a matter of getting a vision. It's a matter of getting a vision that the building is on fire. Culture is on fire. Western civilization is on fire, and it's not loving to say, well, we'll just let people decide where they want their kids to go to school. No, we need to teach them what's going on. We have 3 major big rocks in our jar, if you understand that. You remember that metaphor, the big jar, and how many big rocks can you get in there? The Herzog Foundation is not quite 5 years old. We'll be 5 years old at the end of this year. Mr. Herzog left an amazing nest egg resource for the purpose of advancing K-12 Christ-centered education across the country. Hundreds of millions of dollars for the purpose of advancing K-12 Christ-centered education across the country. That's our mission. He didn't tell us how he wanted us to do it. He simply told us this is what he wants done, and we take it seriously. I was the first hire in 2021. We just onboarded number 53 full-time this past week. What in heaven's name are 53 full-time people doing? Trying to change the country, for crying out loud. But I will tell you, one of my recent heroes is a man named Dr. Glenn Schultz out of South Carolina. Wrote a book entitled Kingdom Education. Here's what he said. He said in the book Kingdom Education that there is a 3-legged stool that creates a foundation for a child to build a life on. They can sit on it and it will hold them up. It's the family, it's the school, and it's the church. And when all 3 of these come together and are building a foundation that's working together, it builds a foundation that a child can build a life on and find that it's true. And I will tell you, as I travel the country, as a retired pastor myself, it pains me to say it is typically the church that refuses to come on board. And so you have families in your church that love their kids, and you love those families. And they're sending their kids to school, and they don't want to send their kids to school. Kids, you know why people are leaving public education in droves? Public education in the last 6 years is down 7%. Christian education is up 4%. Homeschooling is up 51% in the last 6 years. Why is this happening? Because they're not making disciples. Because COVID, if there was a silver lining, it was that parents were awakened to what in heaven's name is happening in the classroom. And 30 years ago, this wasn't happening in the classroom. But this is what's happening in the classroom. And so we have 3 big rocks in our jar. And the first one is to continue to put fodder on the fire that says this is what's happening in a public school near you. We created Read Lion, R-E-A-D, Lion, readlion.com. The Lion was created to be a bold voice for Christian education. So we write a lot of stories about homeschool, basically saying, as Tori said, if it's been 30 years since you've thought about home education, you should take another look. Because all of your stereotypes of what home education is, it is not. It is rigorous education. I know homeschool families that are literally NASA scientists. I mean, home-educated kids. The latest report, I read it just before I came up here. I wanted to make sure I was right. You know how 4th graders and 8th graders take standardized tests every year across the country? There's a report card that's put out every year. It comes out in September. The 2025 report just came out last month, reporting on 2024 statistics. Here's the report. Across the country, 4th grade reading. 30% of 4th graders across the country are able to read at a 4th grade level. 30%. How is that a passing grade on any? Where was this kind of latitude on grading when I was a student? How is 30% a passing grade? And that's why parents, that's why this generation of parents, my daughters and my son-in-laws, oh my gosh, you know, when we were raising our daughters, we have 3 daughters. My wife is a female, we had a female dog. I've had estrogen poisoning. I'm just gonna lay it out there. I've had estrogen poisoning. Once you've had it, you're susceptible to it again, I'll tell you that. Well, my wife and I have 3 daughters, and when the child would cry, I would be like, hey, your kid's in there crying. You ought to get up there. Man, my son-in-laws, they get up and they I don't know what they do with the baby in the middle of it. They're not built to deal with the baby in the middle of the night. But they're wonderful fathers, and my daughters are wonderful daughters, and our young people, your children and your grandkids, painting with a broad brush, but I'm saying this generation takes parenting serious. And you know what they're doing? They are crying out to legislators across the country, this is not acceptable. We want more options for our kids to be able to learn. And legislators are paying attention. 6 years ago, if we would have had this conversation, I would have told you, you know how many, 6 years ago, if you would have said, how many states have some version of education choice? The answer would be 0. Today, there are 18 states with universal school choice, meaning the parent can pick wherever is going to be the best education. And our friends at Education Choice say that within the next 2 years, there'll be 35 states with some version of education choice. Why is this happening? Because parents are saying this is a failing grade, it's a broken system, and it's unacceptable. For 3 reasons, they're pulling their kids out of public education: bullying. Who's in charge of the classroom? Number 2, academics. 30% can read, not my kid. This is not acceptable. And the 3rd reason is woke ideology. And I would just say to every pastor in the room, God has given you an opportunity to make a difference in the lives of the students, of the families that are a part of your congregation, if you would just begin to prayerfully consider, Lord, should I do something? ReadLion.com is continuing to write stories. We write between 15 and 20 articles every single day about what's going on in K-12 education across the country. We write a lot of stories about home education. We write a lot of stories about Christian schools. And we write a lot of stories about what's going on in public education. And it's happening, as you very well know, in urban areas, but I will tell you it is not limited to urban areas. It's in suburban areas, it's in rural areas. It is a broken system that is engaged in spiritual warfare and hates everything that you stand for and that you believe in. And the time has come for us as the church to say, this is not acceptable. When you look at the history of Sunday school, you know the history of how Sunday school started? It actually started in the late 1700s in Europe, where children were engaged with no labor laws and they were working 7 days a week. And it was the church who said, these kids cannot read, they cannot write, and they have no future. This is not acceptable. We will bring them into our building on Sunday. We will take on the corporations and we will bring every kid in our neighborhood into our building all day long, and the only break will be corporate worship. But we are going to teach these kids to read. That is the genesis of Sunday school. It then transferred to Chicago, and that's where it happened in the United States, the exact same template, when the pastors and the church said, this is not acceptable for our people. We will teach them to read. The Bible became the textbook. A is for Adam. B is for Bible. C is for Christ. D is for the devil, the dragon, the serpent from hell. E is, and that's the genesis of Sunday school, when the church said, enough is enough. I really appreciated Judge Brown referencing, King George said he was not so concerned about the farmers with pitchforks. Who caught his attention was what Britain called the black-robed regiment, who continues to sow seeds of revolution on every street corner in the colonies. It was the clergy who said, this is a noble fight. We will serve none but God. We will be the tyrant to no one. We will be equal to all humanity. And it was the church who cried for the revolution. How many times has the church been the voice of morality in the country? And I just want to encourage you. I just want to encourage you to take up your place as the church. The Lion is continuing to fuel. This is what's happening. We have Christian schools that link ReadLion.com to their school website because they just want their parents to see the sacrifice that you're making. This is why. Second big rock in our jar is 20,000 Christian schools in the country, and how can we help all of them? Now, I will tell you, they would love for us to build them a cafeteria and a fine arts center, and I will tell you, you have a better chance of being struck by lightning multiple times than you do getting $1 from the Herzog Foundation for your building. But the reason is because what we found, I took the first 6 months when I came on staff and I traveled the country and I talked to seasoned Christian educators across the country. And here's what I found. And again, I'm painting with a broad brush. But what I found was the average person running a Christian school has a background in education, but they've never run anything. They know pedagogy, they know how students learn, they know classroom management, they know lesson planning, and then when you say, let's talk about donor development, let's talk about marketing your Christian school. Let's talk about hiring and firing and managing people. Pretty much the same way that I looked right out of seminary. I have all of this theological background. I've never run anything. And so what do? Each one does what is right in his own eyes. And how's that turn out in our book? Everybody's trying really hard. What we determined was there are smart people running Christian schools, but they don't know what they don't know. Let's bring professional development all over the country, free of charge to them, and teach them how to run a school. We have identified 25 different areas where Christian schools need help. And we have created, on average, 3-day trainings to deal with one specific topic. And we tell 20,000 Christian schools across the country, you buy the tank of gas and get to our 3-day training, we'll put you up in a Marriott on our dime. We'll cover all your meals on our dime. We'll bring in the experts on our dime. And if we're going to be at the Willard, which we're not, but if we were, we'll foot the bill for the Willard. Your only cost as a Christian school or as a homeschool co-op, your only cost is to buy a tank of gas and get to the training. We have 25 different trainings. Each one is its own 3-day topic. Being taught by people, I don't teach them, I'm a pastor, for crying out loud, by people who have a track record of teaching how to do donor development. You're not going to bake sale your Christian school into solvency. You're not going to do it. You need donors. How do you find them? You need donors who don't need a bake sale. You need donors who need a vision. They used to give to the Boy Scouts. They don't give to the Boy Scouts anymore because the Boy Scouts lost their way. They used to give their alma mater. I'm not giving to that. I'm not giving that. That's a terrible return on my investment. They're out there. They're out there in the largest percentage in American history. The largest transfer of wealth in American history is in the process of taking place right now, and you better believe Congress wants their hands on your dollars. Well, one party in Congress wants their hands on your dollars. It's out there. The money's out there. They just need a vision. We teach them how to cast the vision. We teach them where to find them, how to find them. We feel like if we can build a movement, the movement will build the schools, right? And so what we're doing is, what we're saying to 20,000 Christian schools, you get to our training and we'll foot the bill. You just have, now, could we buy their gas? We could, we just won't. They have to have some skin in the game. But if you've got a Christian school, if you have a Christian school, we're here to help. And this is why we don't build buildings. We want to help you do what you really need, and that is figure out how to raise the money, figure out how to manage the people, create a culture. One of our coaches for culture building, for hiring and firing, is a guy named Dr. Doug Waldo. He oversees the organization called Best Christian Workplaces. Did you know there even was such a place? They actually have criteria. Here's what it takes to be recognized as a best Christian workplace. He told me that across the country, those organizations that receive an award as the best Christian workplace, he told me the number 4 reason why an employee works at the best Christian workplace, the number 4 reason is salary. The number 4 reason. The number 1 reason, the culture. This is my ministry. You can't fire me from this. You can try, but you can't fire me from this. We have each other's back here. We are fighting the gates of hell here. That's what we do here. It's not about a paycheck. Whose job is it to create that culture? As the head of your school. How do you build that? I guarantee you they didn't have a class at, Pitt State on how to build a Christian culture in your Christian school in the education department. We want to teach them how to do that. In 2025, we are right on pace. We're wrapping up the end of October. In 2025, we are right on pace. We will host 100 trainings this year across the country. We're talking every week. We're doing 2 trainings somewhere in the country. We do a lot of trainings at the Museum of the Bible right here in Washington, D.C., the Reagan Library in Simi Valley, California, Fort Worth, Texas, the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter in Kentucky, the Billy Graham Library in Asheville, North Carolina. All across the country, we do these trainings because we really feel like if we can strengthen the operation of the school. You have people who love students and they love Jesus. They just have never run anything before. Smart people who just need training. Training is a big thing for us. And the third thing is we launch Christian schools where we can find a church and a pastor who says, you know what, the Lord's been working on me and we need to do something. But I didn't take a class in seminary on how to start a Christian school. When it comes to how do we do this, I don't know. I don't even know where to start. How do I do it in Washington, D.C.? How do we start a Christian school in Nevada? How do I start a Christian school in Missouri? How do I start a Christian school in Massachusetts? By the way, I would say move to New Jersey. That would be a start. Would we move to New Jersey? You know what I learned? Every state law, every education law is state specific. Okay, so the laws of Nevada may be like the laws of Missouri or may not be. In the state of Massachusetts, you ready for this? We could all start a Christian school in Massachusetts. Wouldn't that be fun? Let's do it. We could all start a Christian school in Massachusetts. We simply need to get permission from the local school district that wherever we want to put our Christian school, the school district needs to sign off on that they need a Christian school within the parameters of that school district. That's a state law in Massachusetts. You can start a Chick-fil-A if you can get McDonald's to sign off on that we need a Chick-fil-A in our community. They have not started a school, a Christian school, for 40 years in the state of Massachusetts by design. But we have got a brother up there who's working with pastors. And last year, using our Schoolbox, hfschoolbox.com platform, free platform, it's free. Everything we do is free. We're just not going to build you a fine arts center. We're not going to build you a cafeteria or a gymnasium. But everything that we have is free to you to do this. Let's go change the country. Last year, Michael King, in churches littered across the state of Massachusetts, launched 17 new church-based learning centers in Massachusetts. Now, these are church-based learning centers. They're not schools. They're 4 days a week. They're 8 a.m. to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They're graded, first grade, second, but they're not schools. They're church-based learning centers is what they are. This year, this past September, new academic year, God used Michael King to launch an additional 25 church-based learning centers in Massachusetts. And he has vision for more. And I just want to tell you, in 2025, through the HF Schoolbox platform, we have been able to launch 228 new Christian schools in 48 states this year across the country. And we would love to help you do it. We would love to help you do it. We'll put our money where our mouth is. And if you have the volunteers that are prayed up and saying, we are going to take this on, we will get them everything that they need to be able to use your facility and perhaps their volunteer hours, or depending on what kind of vision that God gives you. If you want to start a 1-day-a-week homeschool co-op, HF Schoolbox will help you do that. If you want a 5-day-a-week K-12 classical school, Schoolbox will help you do that. If you want a hybrid, that's a combination, a couple days at the church with a certified state teacher, and the balance of the week, it's home education. HF Homeschool, HF Schoolbox will help you do that. And if you want a one-room schoolhouse, holy cow, Arizona is exploding with literally a one-room schoolhouse. All over the state of Arizona, they're putting in these micro schools. It's anywhere from 8 to 12 students, a variety of ages, with, half pints sitting at the front of the room and a dozen students, all a variety of ages. The scores, the test scores are going through the roof. It's 12 students to a teacher. And it's affordable. It's economical. Michael King told me the average tuition price for one of his church-based learning centers, it's $100 per student per month. If you have the passion, God has literally created something in this hour. Let's strike while the iron's hot. And at the Herzog Foundation, this really is our mission, to advance K-12, Christ-centered education across the country, home education and Christian schools. And if you're serious, we're serious. Go to www.herzog, Herzog, foundation.com. Turns out we're not the only Herzog Foundation on the planet. We're just the one you care about. HerzogFoundation.com, and you'll find everything that we're doing. But everything that we're doing is free of charge for the purpose of advancing the kingdom of God and building followers of Jesus Christ. Thank you for your time. God bless you. God bless your ministry.
That'll do it for this week's edition of CURE America with Donald T. Eason. Thank you to Douglas Eagle and Dr. Darryll Jones for equipping pastors to protect both their finances and the next generation. Coming up from last week's episode, an encore presentation of one of last week's most powerful conversations with the Honorable Janice Rogers Brown, retired federal judge on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals and one of the most brilliant legal minds of our time. Here's a preview. Welcome to Cure America with Donald T. Eason. Today we bring you a very special speech from CURE's 2025 National Clergy Summit, held at the historic Willard Hotel in Washington, D.C. Judge Brown was confirmed to the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit on June 8th of 2005. She retired from that court in 2017 with great distinction. From 1996 to 2005, she served as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court in the state of California. She previously served as Associate Justice of the 3rd District Court of Appeals in Sacramento and as Legal Affairs Secretary to former California Governor Pete Wilson. She currently serves on the boards of the Association of College Trustees and Alumni, the Woodson Center and its affiliated 1776 Unites Project, and the Ulysses S. Grant Institute for the Study of Democracy. She chairs the advisory board of the New Civil Liberties Alliance and is occasionally a visiting professor at the University of California, Berkeley School of Law. She has been honored with the Jurisprudence Award of the Claremont Institute Center for Constitutional Jurisprudence, the Originalism and Religious Liberty Award of the Alliance Defending Freedom, the James Wilson Institute Leadership and the Law Award, the Baroness Thatcher Liberty Award of the Pacific Research Institute, and was selected as a 2019 recipient of the prestigious Bradley Award. In addition to these great honors and professional accomplishments, Judge Brown was a featured author of an essay entitled Bread and Stones, which appeared in CURE's 2024 policy tome, The State of Black Progress. In this outstanding essay, Judge Brown argues that the U.S. Supreme Court's 1873 Slaughterhouse decision subverted the protections in the 14th Amendment, turning what was meant for bread into a stone. Commenting on a later Supreme Court decision, she said, "In the framers' Constitution, equality and liberty were two sides of the same coin, complements, not opposites. It's my great pleasure to introduce the Honorable Janice Rogers Brown."
Well, thank you. It's the first time I've got a standing ovation before I said anything. So the tomatoes are going to come after now. I know how this goes. Well, it is a great pleasure to be here. I'm really honored. When Marty asked if I would begin the Clergy Summit, I said I would love to. I think that shepherds have a very hard job. I admire them tremendously, but better them than me. So I hope you have a wonderful summit. I hope that you hear things that lift your heart and help you to go back to this difficult task with even more energy and resolve. A friend of mine likes to tell the story of his first day in kindergarten. He says, the teacher asked the class to draw a portrait of a famous person. They were only given 10 minutes, and given their level of skill, most of them didn't even need 10 minutes. But after everyone else had put down their pencils, Timmy was still working away very intently. And the teacher intervened. She asked Timmy, who did he choose to make a portrait of? And he explained very seriously that he was drawing a picture of God. Not wanting to hurt his feelings, the teacher very gently explained She said, Timmy, no one knows what God looks like. Well, said Timmy, not looking up from his project, they will in a minute. I love that story because I think it reflects the kind of child's heart that we're supposed to have. And it would be wonderful to feel like not only that we know God, but we could share him with anybody, right, in a minute. And I wish I could tell you that in a minute you will have such an epiphany and all will be clear about what's going on with religious liberty and the things that are happening to churches now. But it isn't so. I will do my best, but in the words of an old song from the 60s, I know a lot of old songs from the 60s, the era of real music, I would say. But this song says, there's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. So I have to begin with an apology. Today's discussion will be a mile wide, but only an inch deep. Marty only gave me 3 hours. Don't panic, I'm joking. But at least I hope it will give you some food for thought and some ideas about what you want to dig into. So what we are now is not what we once were. There was a time when the new world and the new order of the ages was eagerly awaited. In fact, that was America's motto, Novus Ordo Secularum, a new order for the ages. And so Americans embraced their destiny of bringing light to a benighted world, and they thought of themselves as the almost chosen people. However, in the fullness of time, civilizational confidence ebbed away, sapped by a series of heresies, half-truths, and an abundance of hubris. What began as a sliding feeling, a slight disorientation, became a lurch and then a sickening, heart-stopping plunge. We fell like a meteorite, our fading light painting a streak on the walls of heaven as we hurtled into the dark. How we fell, how we went from being a city on a hill to no more than a faint luminescence at the bottom of the abyss is a stern cautionary tale. Okay. The men who pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor could not have anticipated that in less than 200 years, their new order for the ages would have passed away, superseded by a world contemptuous of ideas linked to traditional law and morality, the law of nature and nature's God, and enthralled to totalitarian secular ideologies and their promise of untrammeled power. Ken Burns recently made a very startling statement, and that's what got me thinking about this speech. Burns is a videographer famous for making in-depth studies of cultural developments and historical events. And you probably, even if you don't immediately recognize his name, you've probably seen his work. He produced remarkable histories of jazz, baseball, the Civil War, among others. And he's now studying the American Revolutionary period. He recently told an interviewer that the two most significant events in all of human history are, 1, the incarnation, and 2, the establishment of the American Republic. That's a pretty amazing statement, right? Now, as to the first, I don't take any issue with that. He's certainly right about that. As to the second, I was really thinking about this, and my response is maybe. you know, there might be some evidence for thinking that. If it is true, then those events are arguably linked, right? Burns says the significance of America's founding is that the nation sought to create citizens rather than subjects. And while I think his statement was remarkable and it really caused me to start thinking about this, I don't exactly agree with what he says is the reason America is so significant. Other regimes in other epochs had citizens. Republics have been established before. The Greek city-states had citizens. Paul was a citizen of Rome. I think the significance of America, what made the founding exceptional, is the novel idea about the consequences of human equality. The founders presumably believed the statement adopted by Thomas Jefferson from the Virginia Declaration of Rights, edited and endorsed by others at the convention, and you could all say it with me, quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Yeah. Now, Lazy Kolakowski says that is the most famous single statement ever written in the Western Hemisphere. But he also acknowledges that what was self-evident to the founders would appear either patently false or meaningless and superstition to many great men, past and present, who have attempted to shape our practical imagination. Now, Kolakowski has in mind iconic thinkers like Aristotle, Hobbes, and Nietzsche, but we need not go that far back to find disparagement of our founding principles. We could add the names of pro-slavery advocate John C. Calhoun, as well as American presidents like Woodrow Wilson and Franklin Roosevelt, to the list of those who argued for liberation from constitutional piety in favor of a reevaluation of the Constitution. Calhoun said human equality was a self-evident lie. We know why he was making that argument, right? Woodrow Wilson dismissed the stirring words of the Declaration of Independence as 4th of July sentiments, and Franklin Roosevelt argued for a second Bill of Rights, which would define not the negative rights retained by each individual under the natural law, but the positive rights owed by government, not the idea of our Declaration or our Constitution. Anyway, the founders were not saying that all people have equal abilities, or as James Madison described them, equal faculties. They never suggested all people are entitled to equal goods. They were declaring a philosophical truth. Human beings are neither gods nor beasts. They occupy a level between the two. This is true of every human, and in that respect, they are all equal. The drafters of our constitutional documents assume that any good regime must respect the nature of the creature to be governed. Man was a creature of the Logos, whose rational nature, created by the God of the Logos, was guided by the moral law engraved on every heart. Jacques Barzon divides modern history, the last 500 years, this way. He says the years 1500 to 1660 were dominated by the issue of what to believe in religion. 1661 to 1789 by what to do about the status of the individual and the mode of government. 1790 to 1920 and beyond by the question of how social and economic equality should be achieved. The American Revolution is on one side of this great divide. The French Revolution is on the other. Thus, the American Revolution represented the culmination of religious consciousness applied to the design of government. The French Revolution heralded the beginning of the secular age, and this profound discontinuity in worldview has made all the difference.